I now call upon the Assistant Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honourable Sakiusa Tubuna. You have the floor, sir.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Ministers, Honourable the Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Members of the House, the guests in the gallery and those that are watching from their own home. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to respond to the 2023-2024 budget that was delivered on Friday, June 30th by the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Professor Diman Prasad. But first, Mr. Speaker, I wish to respond to some of the issues that has just been raised by Honourable VM Pillay with regards to the sugar industry. Mr. Speaker, sir, for the last 10 years, this industry has been heavily subsidized by the Fiji government. $1 billion for the last 10 years. And we are subsidizing everyone from those that are producing 50 tons, 100 tons to 400 tons. And this government will need to look at this very seriously of how we're going to address the industry. We are going to look at the returns of how much we are getting, because a lot of funds have been spent. $1 billion, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, compiling a comprehensive budget against an economic backdrop that the People's Coalition government has inherited is a difficult task. I want to first acknowledge all the hardworking civil servants who worked long hours to help the Honourable Minister of Finance put this budget together. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a far cry from the budgets of the last 16 years, which were dictated by two men, and two men only. Now we can hear them barking, but in the last two parliaments they never had any say all in the planning and formulation of the budgets. Their inputs were never taken on board their own Minister for Economy. The budget for New Fiji provides an adequate prescription to getting an economic management of our country back on track. Indeed, the tough decisions have to be made. This budget is here to liberate all the Fijians from the shackles of dictatorial leadership that the two-man rule which has brought this country to the brinks of economic collapse. On the civil service, Mr. Speaker, sir, to set some context to what the People's Coalition government has inherited, it is important to remind this August House about the state of civil service, merely a little over 7 months ago. Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji First government for 8 years in office bragged that they will reform the civil service to a more world-class international civil service. They introduced a policy initiatives such as the Open Merit Recruitment System, OMRS, to reform the recruitment system in the civil service. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, the size of the civil service during that term increased from 27,000 to 35,000. Initially, the cost of the civil service was only 700 million, Mr. Speaker, sir. When the Fiji First ended their term, the cost of maintaining the civil service was 1.26 billion, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, where is the efficiency that they talked about? We have not witnessed any evidence of this, Mr. Speaker, sir. Those of us who worked through the ranks of the government know for a fact how civil servants were manipulated by the previous government. Positive criticism was not encouraged. In summary, it was their way or the highway. Mr. Speaker, sir, civil servants became a workforce of yes people who did not question policy for fear of being sacked. In fact, there was a running joke for it. Those who dared to question or provide a critical analysis of the status quo risked reaching 55 prematurely. Mr. Speaker, sir, many government workplaces became toxic, where civil servants were reprimanded if seen in the company of citizens who did not publicly support government policy. It is a known fact that many would avoid fraternizing with family members, colleagues and friends just to avoid being accused of disloyalty to government.
Order.
In effect, the absence of sound analysis so as to not to rock the boat was consequently a disservice to our citizens. Mr. Speaker, sir, the lack of good economic cadre within government cost government. Take, for example, the National Planning Office, which was competent technical secretariat of government and that provided policy analysis and advice to the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister. When the Ministry of Strategic Planning, National Development and Statistics was disbanded, we gradually began to witness the proposal and implementation of policies that lacked a thorough analysis and informed advice. The 2023-24 budget table before this House for debate addresses the anomaly we now have to deal with as a result of poorly researched policies. I am confident, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the 2023-24 budget will help steer us out of the economic mess that we have inherited. In an attempt to control everything, self-serving changes to civil service structure resulted in a one-man rule that lacked higher level of scrutiny before recommendations are tabled for considerations. Mr. Speaker, sir, we recognize that our economy is stuck in a serious debt hole of some 9.8 billion. A debt hole that is a record for Fiji and largely the creation of your previous two-man dictatorship. We heard from Deputy PM Honorable Mano Kamkamidi yesterday about the gaping hole of 500 million created by the Fiji First government. That is why we have to increase the value-added tax from 9 to 15%. We have to do this to ensure that we cover the various gaping holes that you have created. VAT increase. Mr. Speaker, sir, the coalition government has been transparent and consultative when it comes to this budget. We have made it clear difficult decisions needed to be made to address the major debt crisis we have found ourselves in. Mr. Speaker, sir, in his State of the Nation address just before the budget announcement, the Honorable Prime Minister highlighted that to rebuild this nation, it will not be for business as usual. Government needed to consider hard decisions, how to ensure future growth and prosperity. Yes, VAT has increased, but we have also put in place a number of measures to mitigate the adverse impacts to the poor. We will increase social welfare payments, reduce duty on certain goods, and made a commitment to increase access to basic services. We recognize there will be a short-term pain, but this ultimately for the long-term benefit of all Fijians, for a resilient and sustainable Fiji. I reiterate the Honourable Prime Minister's message that this budget has been prepared to consolidate government finances, minimize wastage, address our high debt at debt level, allocate resources to the priority sectors, and increase access to basic services. This is a people-centered and forward-looking budget. FBC. Mr. Speaker, sir, yesterday Honorable Ali Kimbia made a number of unfounded allegations against FBC. Honorable Kimbia had asked if there has been an investigation into the spending of FBC when the former CEO had provided all the facts to the new board, which was apparently was ignored. And Honorable Bia had alleged that the new FBC board opted to misinform the media about FBC and its operations. Mr. Speaker, sir, those comments by Honorable Bia as a desperate attempt for him to make allegations without any substance, information, or details. The chairman and the board have at no time misinformed the public on FBC's operation, but at all times stated that the facts of the matter in a transparent and accountable manner, including the fact that under the previous leadership, without the PSB grant, FBC was technically insolvent. It may please Honorable Mbia to know that in a short space of 4 months, the new leadership have attained for the first 6 months. Unaudited figures of 1 billion, more than what was achieved in the same time last year. Honorable Mbia further went on to allege that the chairman was using the boardroom for his personal business almost every day. This is far from the truth. The chairman and many board members use it only for FBC-related businesses, and the positive results go to show this. The board has already mandated that any extravagance and wastage, such as the 207,000 vehicle bought by the previous board for the previous CEO, would be eliminated, and FBC would be operated in an efficient and effective manner. This can be seen by the newsroom operating now in a fairly balanced and objective manner rather than as the previous way to risk, the risk of undue influence by the previous CEO. Yes, of course, some staffs have resigned for reasons that will suit them. FBC leadership is committed to running the company in an efficient and effective manner. FBC has an obligation to ensure that its staffs are utilized well for their skills, and the board and management are extremely grateful for the diligence and hard work shown by the staff to be part of the company that is managed efficiently and has the staff safety, including living a balanced life, in mind. FBC and the government have an existing contract covering PSB services, and we are always open to meeting with them to ensure that there will always be an open, transparent process in how the funds are utilized. All things considered, FBC is now free and balanced in reporting and its use of all contents across in many media platforms. It has also cut out extravagant expenses accorded previously, and it is already ahead of its financial targets for the year, being $1 million more positive than the same period last year. Melanesians. Mr. Speaker, I would like to touch on a topic that is very dear to me, which is the plight of the Melanesian people, who have coexisted with other races that exist in this country. Honorable Ali Kimbia yesterday alluded to the limited scholarships opportunity for Melanesian communities. Access to education remains a key priority of this coalition government. We are committed for ensuring students are able to study and unlock greater opportunities for the future. We recognize that they cannot fully do this while burdened with debt. There is a total allocation of $148.2 million in this budget for this initiative. This will cater for the scholarship of 8,720 students and funding needed for the 9,148 existing students. In return, students will serve a bond. I believe that, like our budget, this scheme is fair and balanced. It is a way for making the tertiary education available to low-income families without burdening our students with greater debt. Mr. Speaker, sir, we will accord the priority to our Melanesian students to access this program. Every Melanesian who applies will be provided with this support. Since I took oath in office, I visited many of the Melanesian settlements, namely Manyavan, Nabukandamu, Nabunikandamu, Wailoku, Dombati, Newtown, and Naswat. Mr. Speaker, sir, I learned in those visits about how very little the previous government has cared about the welfare of this important segment of the community. They currently face an existing future as a majority of the land they live in are not being settled. Their leases are about to expire, nothing has been done. Mr. Speaker, sir, the People's Coalition government promises to look into the plight of our Melanesian community and to ensure that the settlements they live in are formalized. Last week, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Minister for Lands, Honorable Vosorong, was in Novalau to undertake discussions with the people of Mbamba and to initiate the process of formalizing their land. Mr. Speaker, the People's Coalition government has presented a future-focused and people-centered budget, one that considers how our actions today will affect Fiji tomorrow. we must be bold enough to confront the issues head-on and make the tough decisions today for the sake of our children and grandchildren. As the Assistant Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, I am honored to support the Honourable Prime Minister in the execution of duties through his ministerial portfolios, which include the Cabinet, the Climate Change, Environment, the Civil Service, Information, Public Enterprises, and Veteran Affairs. Each portfolio plays a critical role in the sustainable development of our nation. Mr. Speaker, sir, despite the continued impact from the crisis, including climate change and external conflict, the People's Coalition Government will work towards achieving our vision of rebuilding our future together for a resilient Fiji. This vision is clearly reflected in the budget allocations with a targeted approach to implementation, growth and development. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am heartened by the commitment to the environment and climate change. The Department of Environment will continue to ensure that Fiji's natural environment is protected, resources are sustainably utilized, all developments are sustainable, the ozone layer is protected, waste is properly managed, and pollution is controlled. Mr. Speaker, sir, the 2023-24 budget provides for the People's Coalition Government's commitment to safeguarding our natural environment and ensuring there is a balance between sustainable development and economic prosperity. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Department of Environment has been allocated funds for the upgrading and maintenance work of the Namboro landfill. This includes the completion of additional sections to cater for waste generated in the Lami-Suva, Nosuri, and Korobo corridors. The maintenance of the Namboro landfill, leachate, the treatment pond, and the subsidized gate fee for municipal councils in the Central Division to collect and properly dispose waste. It is imperative that our waste management systems are effective, efficient, and safe for the receiving environment and human health. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Department of Environment will be developing Fiji's container deposit regulation. This will be an avenue to explore new opportunities to transform waste into valuable resources, reducing our reliance on raw materials and promoting a circular economy. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know that prevention is better than cure. It is clear that preventing pollution will reduce financial and environmental costs. Reducing pollution and promoting conservation and the protection of Fiji's natural resources, including our terrestrial and economic and ocean ecosystems and biodiversity such as coral, forests, river, lakes, and wildlife will be a key priority for this government. The Department of Environment will implement programs relating to conservation and sustainable resource management and enforcement in safeguarding these ecosystems and species across Fiji, including through the Environmental Impact Assessments, EIA. Mr. Speaker, sir, I acknowledge the partnerships are key in this work. I recognize the Department for their continued collaboration with the relevant agencies in meeting our environmental protection, conservation, and biodiversity goals. This includes nationwide business roundtables and EIA clinics. The Department will also develop a series of user-friendly multilingual fact sheets to provide information and guidance on EIA process. The fact sheets will incorporate quick tips, frequently asked questions, and clarification of relevant laws made available through the Department's website for ease of access by investors and the general public. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Department will continue outreach programs in villages and communities in the areas of proper waste management, conservation, and protection of their natural resources, sustainable utilization of resources, including the impacts of climate change. By empowering Fijians with knowledge, we can encourage greater responsibility towards waste reduction. The Department will collaborate with schools, universities, and community organizations to raise awareness in the hope that our citizens will adopt sustainable habits. It is up to us as we have a part to play in ensuring environmental conservation. climate change. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also commend the work of this climate change division. The budget will allow them to work, to continue the good work in addressing the devastating impacts of climate change in vulnerable island nations. Mr. Speaker, sir, the climate change division will receive an allocation and a direct budget support from the European Union and the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. This shows the high level of confidence our partners have in Fiji and our ability to implement positive change. The EU is providing funding to implement the Climate Change Act 2021. This allocation will be used to facilitate and support Fiji's sustainable development objectives, long-term climate ambition, net zero emission target, and commitment to protecting Fiji's environment. This will also contribute to Fiji's sustainable, inclusive, and resilient low-carbon development as a long-term goal. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Climate Change Division will also be updating and maintaining Fiji's climate change portal, a central information hub that collates and makes available climate change data, report, and other information that can be used to raise awareness and strengthen capacity. Mr. Speaker, sir, Fiji has long been a leader on the issue of climate change and is seen as a champion regionally and internationally. The People's Coalition Government will continue this work and reaffirm a commitment to addressing this issue both through impacts being faced by our people and communities, as well as advocating for higher ambition and international forum. Mr. Speaker, sir, I reiterate our Finance Minister's message that, quote, nations are built by the people on the foundations of unity and mutual cooperation. In this spirit, I would like to conclude by again thanking every individual who contributed to the development of this budget. I thank everyone who has participated in its preparation, consultations, sent submissions, engaged in meetings, and are committed to working together in moving us towards a unified and thriving Fiji. Mr. Speaker, sir, I extend my full support and endorsement of the 2023-24 national budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Assistant Minister.